Thanks to our title sponsor, Juniper Networks, for helping make Research Saturday possible. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CyberWire's Research Saturday. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is our weekly conversation with researchers and analysts, tracking down the threats and vulnerabilities, solving some of the hard problems of protecting ourselves in a rapidly evolving cyberspace. Thanks for joining us.
We actually uncovered this, ecosystem that did not really exist a few years ago and has just been getting stronger and stronger. And that's this system of solver bots, the solver APIs that are being built and distributed to actually target specific anti-bot vendors and bypass them completely.
That's Sam Crowther. He's founder of anti-bot company Kasada. The research we're discussing today is titled "The New Way Fraudsters Bypass Bot Management." Juniper Connected Security helps organizations build threat-aware networks that extend security to every point of connection across the network. To learn more, visit juniper.net/security or connect with Juniper on Twitter or Facebook. That's juniper.net/security. And now, a word from our sponsor, Keeper Security. Keeper is the top-rated cybersecurity platform for protecting organizations of all sizes from the most common password-related data breaches and cyber attacks. Did you know that 81% of data breaches are caused by weak password security? Keeper is more than a password manager. It's a scalable and customizable security platform that includes industry-leading features such as automated user provisioning, role-based enforcement policies, SSO SAML integration, advanced reporting compliance, BreachWatch dark web monitoring, and more. Members of the CyberWire community will receive a free 3-year personal password manager when they take a business demo. Visit keepersecurity.com/cyberwire to learn more. And we thank Keeper for sponsoring our show. Now, just to be clear, we're using the term solver bot here as in to solve a problem. Is that where the phrase comes from?
Yeah, so solver being a generic term, I guess the succinct description of them is basically their goal is to get a valid cookie to someone, to abuse, right? That's essentially what they do. So I think where solver comes into it is these anti-bot vendors have JavaScript challenges which need solving, and these adversaries have built tools to solve the challenges and return the valid responses in order to be classified as a human and let people abuse the back-end system.
Well, let's walk through this together. I mean, can we start off with just a description of how bot mitigation typically works?
Yeah, so bot mitigation comes in two components. One is the client side, and then one is the network and session, or the back-end side. So on the client side, a key part of any of this detection is understanding what's happening within the browser, right? Does this browser look real? Is it moving its mouse? Does it look like it has a human behind it? So that upfront detection component means that, traditionally, botters have to be very, very sophisticated and skilled, in order to be correctly classified as human. The server side or the backend side is where it's looking at, pattern analysis within sessions. Okay, this session's human, what's it doing? How many login attempts is it making? And things like that. Now, this has sort of evolved in sophistication, over the last 5 or 10 years to the point where, there are some very sophisticated client-side defenses and some awesome machine learning models on the back end. But, inevitably, that's just changed the way these folk attack.
Well, let's dig into the attacks then. I mean, how are they coming at this?
So what they've realized is that as the anti-bot vendors get better and better, it pushes the skill floor, essentially, like the minimum skill set required up in order to beat them. So there's a small group of people who all of a sudden have a very valuable skill which they can sell en masse. And so what they've started doing is reverse engineering these JavaScript challenges, right? And actually creating automated tools that, reverse engineer them fully automatically, look at the data that they're expecting to be collected from the browser, feed legitimate data straight back to their APIs, and then obtain legitimate sessions. And so they're doing this in a way that's actually got no browser whatsoever. And because, some of these vendors are so ubiquitous, it means that the client base for them is absolutely huge. Like, we track the revenue of one of the big Solver API vendors, and they're making probably $150,000 a month selling this service. And all they need to do is maintain their little decoder to correctly interpret the JavaScript and send the correct information to the anti-bot vendor.
How sophisticated of an effort are we talking about here?
So this definitely depends on the specific vendor. Some are definitely less sophisticated than others. And look, I would say none of the adversaries are, PhDs or anything like that. A lot of them are just people who are interested in bots, who understand the way browsers work and have realized this is a good way to make some cash. Right? So they're very smart individuals, but it's not like they're, these sophisticated crime rings or anything. Like, usually it's just, one or two people who realize they've got a valuable skill.
Can you take us through an example of one of the sessions that you all have tracked here?
Yeah. So what we've seen for some of these Solver APIs is actually where they're used in fraud. So let's say a fraud group wants to wash 1 million credit cards, which is sort of some activity we've seen through a payment provider. What they'll do, instead of building something themselves, they approach one of these solvers and they say, okay, I want to buy 1 million sessions and I want an SLA that all of them will work. And if any don't work, you replace them. So they'll take those 1 million sessions and then they will load them into their bot in order to go and actually, commit the act of fraud that they wanted to, I guess they set out to. And so this has become more and more common, right? Where these fraudsters have realized they can just pay a little bit of money and outsource one of the most difficult parts of any sort of fraud operation, which is beating security systems.
And so what's the cat and mouse here? I mean, in terms of, the folks whose websites are falling victim to this, what's to be done there?
Look, this is a responsibility of the anti-bot vendors, right? That's where the game is. There is, a very clear difference in folk and their ability to iterate and prevent this sort of behavior. And understanding that this is even a problem is the first step to being able to solve it. But it shouldn't fall on the customer. This is absolutely a responsibility of the individual providing the service. And look, what we're starting to see is it's evolved from the anti-bot vendors, but it's starting to move also into some of the anti-fraud vendors as well. And if that trend is to continue, it won't be long before, someone can buy an off-the-shelf solution to beat most e-commerce, website security products.
How do I know if I have a problem here?
Look, this is one of the interesting and also scary parts of this, right? Is their whole business model is getting sessions that look good and that are valid. And so, look, usually the best way to figure out if there's a problem is actually look at your own web traffic data. All right. If you look at, say, login requests or checkouts over the last 2 months, what pattern does it follow? Does it follow day-night cycles? Does it look like human activity? Does it spike up and down, sort of sporadically? Those are actually the best indicators that something like this is going on. Because unfortunately, you can no longer rely on the data and reporting from a vendor when this sort of threat is very, very real.
So what sort of questions should I be asking my vendor? I mean, if I'm engaged with someone who is selling me services to protect me against bots, how do I make sure that they've got the latest, greatest stuff out there to keep me safe?
I think this is very much a dialogue around, how aware of the problem are people and understanding their strategies to address it, right? And it's going to be different for everyone, but making sure that they can actually articulate this is what we actively do to combat this type of activity is very important because, what we see is people sort of hand wave, we have machine learning, we have this, we have that. And the reality is none of that really matters if someone can send the data that's expected to the machine learning model, right? ML is only as good as the data it gets. So it's very important that any vendor in this space has a very active strategy to, almost dismember this type of solving activity.
Can you walk us through some of the technical aspects here? I mean, what specifically are the solver services doing under the hood?
Yeah, so what they're typically doing is decompiling the JavaScript that gets delivered to the client, transforming it into a format that they can easily interact with it in, and then looking at what sort of data attributes it's expecting from the client. It'll then rebuild essentially the entirety of a virtual browser to make sure all the data is legitimate, and then package that up and send it to the client. So it's a relatively streamlined process, which means it's very cost efficient for a lot of the folk building and selling them.
And where would someone go to buy this sort of thing?
You head to Discord, head to various hacking servers. Honestly, that's actually very, very accessible. It's not like it's on the dark web. It is something anyone really who wants to get access to it can.
Do you suspect that, we're in a cat and mouse game for the foreseeable future here?
Absolutely. Like, what they're doing is not illegal, which is unfortunate. Right? They are actively bypassing security systems, yet they're not the ones committing the crime. And so I think they leverage that in their justification, I guess, of what they're doing.
Our thanks to Sam Crowther from Kasada for joining us. The research is titled The New Way Fraudsters Bypass Bot Management. We'll have a link in the show notes. Thanks to Juniper Networks for sponsoring our show. You can learn more at juniper.net/security or connect with them on Twitter or Facebook. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible. If your company would like to reach 250,000 unique listeners every month, send us a note at thecyberwire.com/sponsor. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Rachel Gelfand, Liz Irvin, Elliot Peltzman, Trey Hester, Brandon Karpf, Eliana White, Peru Prakash, Justin Sabi, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next week.